Hey, what's going on, YouTube? We're setting everything up right now.
Is that everybody gonna be able to see it with this, or
Can you just make sure that this is set up? Is when I stand back here that it's
Yeah.
not blurry. So
Hi.
turn the thing.
The camera?
No. Turn the front, the lens in the front.
Oh, okay.
The very front, not that. There you go. That thing.
I can't tell if it's.
No, I'm looking. So
Oh.
Go the other way. Now you're too far over. That's good.
Good?
Good. So let's do this.
Oh, okay. Let me do Instagram again.
Let me get the hose too. Am I live on both?
No, I had to mix the food. Here we go.
Am I live?
You're live.
Cool. Hey, Instagram. I gotta go turn on the water. I'll be right back.
Cool.
Hey, what's going on, CM Cordell? Glad you're here. Hey, I'm having trouble seeing the camera because it's so far away today. Usually it's right in front of my face. So I'm today, but we're gonna make some compost tea today. So I'm gonna show you guys two different ways of doing it. So I'm gonna show you how to make liquids like this, the stuff you buy in the store. And this is a way you do it on the cheap, where you don't have to spend a whole lot of money, and you can use the food scraps that you go through on a daily basis to make powerful liquid fertilizer like that. And then I'm going to show you the other way, which is just buying these fertilizers and making your own tea. So I'll show you two different ways today on how we're going to do it. But how was everybody's week? Did everybody have a good week? Everybody get out in the garden today, or get out in the garden this week? We did. We had a pretty busy week. I've been doing some stuff at the house, some construction stuff at the house all week, so I haven't really had a whole lot of time in the garden. But been pulling a lot of weeds and picking suckers on peppers and eggplant and tomatoes and stuff like that. But yeah, it was a good week. So tonight's video is going to be a little long just because I'm going to show you two different ways of doing it. But stick around for the whole thing, because at the end of everything, we're going to talk about some frequently asked questions, some questions we had this week, which might help you in the garden this week. So we're doing compost tea today. I'm going to show you two different ways. The first way I'm going to show you is how to make your own liquid fertilizer, which is how most people make compost teas. Is they go to the hydroponics store or any nursery and they'll buy liquid fertilizer. and they'll use the liquid fertilizer to fertilize their crops. And there's a difference, right? We've talked about on our lives, we've talked about the fertilizers that are in the dry form, right? So like neem seed meal, alfalfa meal, kelp meal, those are all great things, but that's more of a slow release of minerals and vitamins to your crops, where something like this is going to be an instant fertilizer for your crops. So what I typically do is I'll fertilize using compost teas once a week. So I'll do my meal form monthly. So once a month, I'll make my mix. You guys have seen this mix. It's just 6 cups of alpha meal, 6 cups of earthworm castings, 4 cups of neem seed meal, 3 cups of kelp meal, 2 cups of azomite, and then 1 cup of biochar. So I mix that in like a 5-gallon container, and then I'll throw a handful at the base of every crop that needs it. So like my heavy feeders are the ones I'm typically giving the fertilizer to. When I'm growing my little baby greens and stuff, I don't really do that because it's such a short window. When I'm putting the greens in, I'm typically done harvesting them within that 60-day window. So no need to fertilize throughout that growing process, but I will fertilize the crops after a bed flip. So you've seen the video that I've put out, the bed flip video, that kind of shows you how I flip a bed once I pull one crop out and crop in. But with my heavy feeders, they're in the ground for 100, 120 days. So during that window, they're gonna eat up. The roots are gonna eat up all of the minerals and the vitamins in the soil, and they're gonna be hungry for more. And you got to give them more somehow, right? So today we're going to talk kind of about those ways and what you can do to keep your plant growing well and healthy through the whole season. Now, by keeping your plant healthy, this is going to improve everything. So the insect pressure, the disease pressure, if you can grow strong plants, then you're going to avoid the insects, you're going to avoid disease down the road. So I fertilize just using the kelp meal monthly, and then I do this on a weekly basis. And so I'm going to get into it. I'm going to show you the 2 different ways that I do it. So the first way I want to show you is how to make. This is the stuff you can buy in the store, which is great, but why pay for something when you can make it for free, right? So that's what I want to show you today, is a free way to make this stuff. So you need to do this. Just need like a 5-gallon bucket. So here's my 5-gallon bucket. And then you need stuff to put in the 5-gallon bucket. So the 5-gallon bucket, typically in my bucket, I'm typically throwing a lot of food scraps. So we go through this like on a daily. This is just from a day. All you out there that eat the medical medium way, you're used to a lot of food scraps like this. But maybe you don't have a compost bin, so this is just going back to the city, and the city is turning it into compost. Maybe you do have a compost bin, and this stuff is going in your compost bin, which is great. That's one way to make soil. But today what I want to show you is how to make fertilizer. So what I do is I take the food scraps, and I just throw them in a bucket. Now, if I was to do this in big batch, I'm just showing you in little batches today. So this is just for display purposes. But let me show you. This is typically what I'll use to make my mix. So I'll fill this bucket with food scraps, and I'll let this break down for like 3 months. And then at the end of 3 months, you'll end up with something like this. So if you want to make them in big batches, you could do something like that. Just go buy like a garbage can at Home Depot or one of those 55-gallon drums. and throw all your food scraps in there. The scraps I throw in, I mean, I throw in bananas, I throw in lemon peels, I throw in, got some celery pulp here. So everybody's always asking us what to do with the celery pulp. I just dump it in my bucket. I've got celery tops here, throw that in, orange peels, I got watermelon rinds. So basically you just dump all this stuff in a bucket. Now your bucket is going to fill up pretty darn quick if you're eating like we do, because we go through a lot of food scraps. So this is just to show you, but if you're going to do this and want to do this on a much larger scale, go get a garbage can or go get a 55-gallon drum. So I put my scraps in. I've got these are apricots, so I'm going to throw the apricots in here. They just went bad. And then I got green waste too. So I've got some mullein leaf here. We're going to break the mullein leaf up, throw that in. This is lamb's quarter, just popped up as a weed. We're going to throw that in. Now I typically fill it to the max because this stuff is going to break down. It's going to shrink as it breaks down. So you might fill it to the max, and like a week later, it might be a lot of liquid. Okay, and then all I'm doing is I'm filling this up with water. And like I said before, I'll let this stuff sit for typically 3 to 6 months. There was a guy that we farmed with up north, and what he was doing was he was doing the same process, and he would just take like wild nettle, and he would throw nettle in a big, where it's going to be, right? So this right here is I'll let this sit for 3 months, and then I'll use it. Now, while this is sitting, I'm going to, like every day, I'm going to come in with my aquarium pump. So this is just an aquarium pump. It's the Aquatop AP100 aquarium pump. And this is what you're going to need to add oxygen to your compost teas, right? So get one of these, and then you have to buy the tubing. Tubing's real cheap. And I'll link all this stuff in the description on YouTube. So if you go on our YouTube page, you'll get a product list. So everything we're talking about today, you'll get access to and you can purchase. But I use an aquarium pump, and then I just on a weekly basis, 3 days a week, I'll go and I'll stick the aquarium pump in. So here's the end of my pump, and at the bottom there's a weight, and that's so the bubbles get to the very bottom, and then it will bubble. So I'll do this 3 days a week. I'll just, usually I'm making compost tea, so I'll take this and I'll put it in from my compost tea. I'll put it in the
Instagram is glitching.
Yeah, it is a little bit.
So I would just announce, like, you can watch it on YouTube.
Oh, okay. Instagram's having some problems according to Ashley, so
Yeah,
if you're having trouble watching it, go on YouTube, and you'll be able to see all the stuff we're talking about here. So yeah, so what I typically do is I'll use the aquarium pump. I'll do it 3 days a week. I'll stick it in there, and I'll let it sit for like 6 hours, and that way it just bubbles and adds oxygen. When you add oxygen to your compost teas, everything's going to break down a lot quicker. At least that's what I noticed. So yeah, this is an important piece. It's just an aquarium pump. I'll link it below. And then I let that sit for 3 to 6 months, and then you'll have something like this, some sort of liquid nutrition that you can add to your plants, and it was free. You know, it didn't cost you anything. But with plants, when plants uptake their minerals and their vitamins and their nutrients through the root system, they bring them up through the stem and they leave them on the leaves. This is why the leaves are so important to have in your gardens, because the leaves are where all the minerals and the nutrients and the vitamins sit, right? So by taking those leaves of the fruit, taking the leaves of the stuff, the green waste from the garden, and putting that in a tea, as that stuff breaks down, it releases those minerals and those vitamins into that water, and then feeding that water to the plants adds those minerals and those vitamins to your plant and allows your plant to grow. Does that make sense? So that's why this is a very easy process to do. And growing veganically, you know, you're not using a lot of animal product, and a lot of animal product is high in nitrogen. So this is a good way to get a lot of nitrogen and potassium and phosphorus from various food scraps. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the other way. Okay, so I'm going to show you guys how to make the liquid form. So if you're just buying this stuff, you can get it at a hydroponics store. I'll go through everything you see on the table here, and then we'll add it to another bucket. So we'll add this to this bucket, and then I'll show you at the end how I put it all together and make it work. So how I measure everything is just with a shot glass. We have no need for this anymore because we don't drink. So teaspoons of product. So that's what I typically do per gallon. So you'll see when I start pouring the shots. But let me go through what I got here. So I got BioThrive Grow. It's a 4-3-3, so 4 with nitrogen, 3 for phosphorus, and 3 for potassium. It's also got some magnesium in it, some sulfur, some potash, which is all good stuff for long-term growth. And this is made from like seaweed and alfalfa meal, and it's got some plant protein in here, a bunch of stuff, a long list. So, but this is veganic. There's no animal product in here, and this is a good all-around, all-purpose fertilizer. So that's the first thing I use. Next thing I use is, this is called Earth Juice. And I'll link all this stuff below. This is a lot of seaweed. I use this stuff called Root Ruckus, which is basically mycorrhizal fungal with humic acid and kelp. I use this stuff here, which is a bunch of different types of seaweed, calcium and magnesium. This is important for a lot of those plants that you're growing long term. So this is a good one to prevent blossom end rot, yellowing of leaves, and then just some kelp. And then I've got Epsom salt. Right, so I've got my magnesium and calcium here from 2 different sources. And then lastly, what this is compost juice from my compost bin. So this is that's kind of a big one because I use a lot of that weekly. As all the food scraps break down in my compost bin, it releases this juice that leaks out of one of the corners, And so I pick it all up in that bucket, and I dump it in my compost teas. And it works wonders because it's basically what I just showed you to do in that bucket, make your own liquid fertilizer. It's doing it in the compost bin. So as that stuff breaks down, it's just landing in this bucket, and then I'm just dumping it in my compost teas. And so it's got all those minerals and the vitamins and the nutrients from the fruit scraps as they break down in the compost bin. Now, if you want to get a compost bin that has like a spout at the end, or maybe you have a compost bin that leaks a lot, it's it's a good idea to get a compost bin with like a spigot on the end. There's a company out there, I think they're called Hot Bin. I'll link it in the description below, but they make these hot compost bins. So you put all your food scraps in there, and then at the very bottom they have like a little spigot, and then you can turn it. You can have like a little bucket at the bottom. You turn it on, and then the liquid comes out of it, and that's what you could also use in your compost teas. All right, so next what we're going to do is we're just going to make the tea. So I'll kind of walk you through each one here and show you how much I put in my teas. So this is the sea minerals, the Ocean Magic. So I've got a marker here, so I kind of know how much. And on all these buckets, they say light feeding, heavy feeding, what to use. And I typically use the 4 teaspoons per gallon. So 4 teaspoons per gallon. My little marker here, that 2 on the thing is 4 teaspoons. So I typically make a pretty big batch. So I'll double my batch. This a 5-gallon container, make a 10-gallon container worth, and then it's bubbled. I'll just pour half of this in one container and then leave half of it in here. So I basically get enough for 10 gallons instead of just making a 5-gallon batch. So let me put this in. So because I'm making such a big batch, I'm going to put 3 of these shot glasses worth in there, which is about 8 teaspoons. So I just put about 8 teaspoons in there. Okay, so that's that one. This is the catalyst. This is made by Earth Juice. It's just kelp meal. We're going to do same deal. 1, 2, 3. Next one, do the same thing. We're just going to add okay, so there's 1, 2, 3. Root ruckus, we're going to do the same thing. So basically all this stuff I use the same amount. I do like 12 teaspoons worth, but I'm making a double batch. So if you're making a single batch, just do half that. Okay, and then the kelp. This is just kelp meal. Hey, can you do me a favor?
Yeah.
Can you go get the there's some flaxseed in the coffee grinder. Can you grab that?
I don't think we have flaxseed.
Yeah, it is. It's in the where all my microgreen seeds are. Just grab like a bucket full. Okay, now the calcium, magnesium. 1, 2, 3. All right. And the last thing I put in is the Epsom salt. Typically what I do with that is I just do 2 shot glass worth.
How much do you want?
Enough to just put in that coffee grinder. All right. And then the last thing I put in is all my juice. So of the juice, I kind of do the same thing. The idea is you're not really going to hurt your plants with this stuff because it's all plants. You're not using like fish emulsion or anything that might burn the plants because it's all plant-based stuff. So you don't have to worry about harming the plant in any way by doing it this way. Okay. And then the last ingredient, what this is my secret ingredient in my compost teas. I don't think many people know about. Well, if you do medical medium, you know about this. This is I'm gonna have you just do it. You can do it for me. Okay. This is flaxseed. So what do we know about flaxseed, right? Vimergy and all the supplements that they make, they use flaxseed, right? And why is that? Because flaxseed material that I have in here and helps the material bind onto the water, right? Does that make sense? So I always add a little flaxseed into my compost tea, and that way it will help the material in here bind onto the water. I do the same thing with my long-term mix here. I throw a little flaxseed in there as well. And I'll put like
how much?
Like 3 to 4 tablespoons is typically what I put in.
Okay.
But it's really not going to harm the plants by putting more or less in there. And then what she's doing is there's a coffee grinder back here. So I have a coffee grinder that I use. So I'll put the flaxseed in the coffee grinder. That in powder form. You don't have to, you just buy the seed.
Is that enough?
Yep, that's good. So here's the coffee grinder. Then I just take it and I dump it in. Now, when you're making this, before you put this material in your sprayer, so before I put the material in my sprayer, I strain out the material. Okay, so that's important because you could see what I just put in here. That was in a meal form, so it would be very difficult for the compost tea sprayer to get any sort of meal out of this the sprayer when they're spraying it. So it's important that when you make this and you use that flax, that you strain it before it goes in the strainer. And you can use like a nut milk bag. That's what we use. We'll use a nut milk bag before we pour it in the actual container. Now, another option is you could use something like this. This is a compost tea bag, and you could use all of the meal, like the kelp meal, the alfalfa meal, the neem seed meal. You can use all the different types of meal, put it in this compost tea bag here, and then stick it in your bucket. And that way the material won't end up in the water. So that's Another way you can do it, you can buy a compost tea bag and then put all your material in this bag and then let it sit in the water. If you strain it, you won't have any problems. I've done it both ways, and just dumping it in here and straining it before it goes into the pack sprayers has done just fine for me. So next, what you're going to do is just going to fill it with water. Now I'm making enough for 10 gallons. I'm making 10 gallons worth here. And when you're making it at home, depending on how much you need to spray on the yard would determine how much of a batch you want to make. Now, 10 gallons will get me enough to spray this whole yard, which, you know, we've got a pretty big setup here with a lot of plants. So 10 gallons is kind of the perfect amount for a large space. But if you have a small space, then just do it this way. And it's really quite easy. When you're making your teas, just read the label, and the label will tell you how much liquid to put in per gallon. So it's very easy to figure out the amounts if this might be too much for you. So I just let it fill up. Okay, so it's not all the way full, but we'll call that full. So here's my tea. Okay. Now I'm ready to actually brew the tea. Okay. I made this myself. This is just a little homemade compost tea brewer. When we were up north, we had 2 buckets, and they were 2 different sizes. This is a 4-gallon bucket. This is a 5-gallon bucket. And all I did was I cut a hole in the top of this 4-gallon bucket, and I stuck my tubing for my pump through the top. And then all I do is I take this top piece, I stick it in the brewer, and it actually fits perfectly on this 5-gallon container. And then you just stick your little cord in there. You have a weight at the bottom, so the weight at the bottom weighs down the tubing. So the tubing sits at the bottom, and then we turn this on. I'm going to see if the cord will reach. So that's it. So you can hear the bubbles. So all it is this aquarium pump adds the oxygen into the material, which oxygenates it, which gives it life again. And then all I do is I leave this on for 24 hours. So you probably want to find a spot where you can get an extension cord out there or something. And the extension cord will have to be outside if you want to put this outside, or you could brew it in a garage or something like that. But pretty easy little setup here. Just get a 5-gallon bucket, a 4-gallon bucket, cut a hole in the top, get a aquarium pump, and then a weight at the bottom, and now you've got compost tea. So I'm going to unplug this, and I'm going to talk about what to do once your tea is made. Hold on one sec here. I'm having some difficulties on YouTube. It shut me down here. Okay, there we go. All right, so once you have your tea brewed, you're ready to put it in your sprayer. This is just a 2-gallon sprayer. You could get a backpack sprayer if you want, if you have a lot of area to cover, but this one does just fine for me. This is a battery-powered one. It's made by Field King. It was right around $90, but they also do make these with a pump where you can pump it, but that just sucks having to sit there and pump something the whole time. So yeah, I ended up getting a battery-powered one. And then at the end, you've got your sprayer. So all you do is you fill this thing up with the compost tea after it's ready, and then you walk around to your plants and you spray it on your plants. Now you can spray it. I typically spray it at the base, at the root of the plants, but I've seen people spray it on the plants and they've been fine. But yeah, I'll spray it right at the root of the crop. And then I always notice, like, the very next day after making a compost tea and giving it to the plants, man, those plants just jump up. And I mean, you don't have to you could do this more than once a week. You could do this every other day if you wanted to, and your plants would just grow like crazy. So you could make a really big batch of it. The home brew, the home compost tea that you made yourself. You can make a huge batch of it and then just have it on hand. And anytime you want the home brew, or you can go out and you can buy it already pre-made for you and do it that way. But I typically do this once a week, and I notice the very next day the plants grow a ton. And this is especially good for peppers and eggplant, because I always notice peppers and eggplant, they grow so slow. Where tomatoes, they grow like crazy. You don't even need to do this with tomatoes. And I typically do this. I put a lot more on my heavy feeders, so the crops that require more fertilizer, the ones that are going to be in the ground for 120 days, they typically require more of a fertilizer. So what I'll do is I'll fertilize those a little more heavy than I do the other crops. But this especially works good with greens. After I cut greens, I spray this over the bed that I cut, and it allows me to get a second cut and helps with not stressing the plant out. So the next cutting comes quicker and looks healthier. But eating the medical medium way, right? We want to get in our bodies the most nutritious plants we can, right? Because those minerals and those vitamins, they help us heal, right? So with compost tea, it's another way to give your plants more minerals, more vitamins, more than any of the stuff you're buying from the grocery stores. Because the stuff in the grocery stores, you don't know what's sprayed on it, and they use a lot of animal product, and you don't know what those animals are being fed, right? All the E. coli, salmonella, stuff like that you hear in the news all the time, that's because what these big scale farms do is they make liquid compost teas, but they make liquid poop compost teas. So they'll take the animal poop, they'll put it in water, and they'll spray that on the crops. And that stuff is just infested with bacteria. So that stuff is on all the food that you buy in the store, even the stuff that says organic. So this is another reason that it's important to just use what you have laying around the yard and make teas out of it. And you saw how easy it was here today. I gave you the free version and the version that you would need to spend some money on. So feel free to use either one. I'll do some more detailed videos on this stuff later down the road. I just wanted to get this out there because right now is kind of the the time you probably want to start fertilizing your crops, at least your first set of fertilizing. So compost tea is a great way to do that. If you're just getting started with your garden, this could be a way to jumpstart the plants, get the plants to grow quicker. By the plants growing quicker and healthier and bigger, they'll produce fruit at a quicker rate. So yeah, so that's kind of it. You know, do you guys have any questions for me? Anybody have any gardening questions? Otherwise, I'm going to go through a couple questions that we got this week on Instagram and YouTube. Okay, so question we had this week was about trellising. So different ways you can trellis your crops. So with my tomatoes, my cucumbers, I typically trellis those, and I use various trellising systems. Now I'm growing in the ground. I'm planting stuff in the ground, and I'm letting it grow upward. And if you're growing stuff in grow bags, I've got a good idea for like grow bags, but you need like 3-4 grow bags of tomatoes and cucumbers to make this work. But what I'll do is I'll take so here's some PVC pipe. So I'll stick one of these in one of my grow bags. I'll stick another one of these in another grow bag. And then I just kind of looks like a teepee in my cucumbers, trellis right up this PVC pipe. You could do this with beans. You can do this with peas. Anything that trellises up. This is a way you can do it using grow bags. So you could do a 4-way TP, a 5-way TP, a 6-way TP, and your crops will grow directly up them and grow nice and tall. And the benefit of seeing stuff is if you trellis something, you're going to get better fruit, bigger fruit, better fruit, more fruit. And especially with tomatoes, cucumbers. So that's one way you can do it in grow bags. That was the question, is how do you trellis something in grow bags? The other thing you can do is buy those tomato cages, but the tomato cages really limit your growth. They only allow the plant to grow, yay high, where if you do something like this, where you trellis them using that TP method, you can get the plants growing nice and tall. Now you don't have to just use PVC. You could use bamboo. You could use rebar. So these are some other ideas. We're doing it here using bamboo because we have a bamboo patch here at the house. So we've got a bunch of those going just with bamboo. These are in the ground, so they're not in grow bags. But I was thinking long and hard about that question, because in grow bags it's tough because you don't have the support, right? So if that tomato grows tall and the bamboo is in the ground and it's only in the ground a foot, you're not going to get much support. That bamboo is going to kind of fall over. So that's why you want to do it with at least 3 bamboos, and then tie the top with some rope, and that would be a good method. Okay, I got a question from Healthy Living Oils. What is compost tea? Well, compost tea is a way you can fertilize your crops. When we consume herbs, right, and then they go in our bodies and they heal our bodies and they do other things to our bodies. This is a similar method, but for your plants. So when you make tea in the kitchen, you typically take dried herb, you put it in some hot water, and then it turns into a tea that you can then consume, right? With this, what you're doing is you're making a compost tea. So you're taking kind of the same method, right? You can buy liquid fertilizers from like a hydroponic store or nursery and make compost tea that way. Or the other method I showed was taking food scraps. So food scraps would be like, I've got some plantain in here, I've got lamb's quarter, I've got mullein leaf, I've got banana peels, orange peels, apricots, lemon peels, just any food scraps, stuff that I might go in the compost bin. Instead of putting it in the compost bin, put it in a bucket or put it in like a garbage pail like this, and let the stuff sit in there for like, and let it sit in there for like 3 months to 6 months to a year, however long you want. The longer it sits, the stronger it's going to be. And that's how you make the tea, and that's what the tea is. It's really beneficial for your plants. It's a way to supercharge your plants and give them instant fertilizer, because the liquid form, the plants can uptake it directly from their roots, where in the meal form, it's a slow release of minerals and vitamins and nutrients to the plant. So compost teas are great because they give your plant instant growth. And that's kind of what it's about. And you're giving yourself a lot more of a healthier plant, more minerals and vitamins to the plant, therefore more minerals and vitamins in your body to help you heal, help you become stronger. But yeah, that's what a compost tea is. And this week we'll be putting out some videos on trellising. So we'll do some trellising videos, probably like 6 videos coming out this week. I tried to get them out last week, but I just didn't have the time. Another question here from Brianna. I just hopped on. I tried making tea from grass and water, but waited 2 weeks instead of 3 to 4 days, and it was so bad, smelled like vomit. My mistake. I'll try your method. Yeah, so like when you're the reason it smelled so bad was because it was stagnant. So when stuff sits there and it's stagnant, then it's just going to rot and smell really bad. That's why you add the oxygen to it. That's why you add the aquarium pump, because you put the aquarium pump in it, and the aquarium pump gets the oxygen into the tea, which then makes the tea living and prevents any sort of mold or mildew from forming on the top. So that's why it's important, whichever method you use, I showed 2 methods, that you at least get some oxygen into the plants on a weekly basis. If it's if you're going long term, you want to at least let the bubbler bubble for 6 hours 3 times a week. That would be my suggestion. But do other things. Don't just do grass. Like, you can collect leaves and herbs and stuff. Dandelion leaf is a good one that grows everywhere. Plantain leaf is a good one that grows everywhere. And you can just throw that stuff in a bin with food scraps. I mean, everybody's got food scraps, right? Everybody's got banana peels. Everybody's got oranges. They've got their celery pulp that they can never get rid of. So celery pulp, throw it and make it a compost tea. It's awesome. Yeah, watch the beginning, because I kind of I talk about the 2 different methods. One was the method that you just commented, and then the second method was if you want to purchase the liquid fertilizer and use that. But you could do it you can do it on the cheap. Everybody's got food scraps, and that's what I do with I have my compost bin, and as my compost breaks down, it leaves me this nice liquid compost, and this is what I use a lot in my compost teas. So if you're looking for a good compost bin, there's a company out there called Hot Bin. I'll link it in the YouTube description, and it has a little nozzle at the bottom. So as you put compost in there and it breaks down, it turns into this liquid, and then you can drain the liquid out of the compost bin, and you can put the liquid in your compost teas. And it's just plant-based liquid, right? Because you're not throwing like meat or eggs or stuff like dairy or anything like that. You're not putting that in your compost bin, or at least you shouldn't be. You're just putting, you're just putting fruit scraps mainly, and maybe some green waste, some of those veggie scraps. But rather than throwing them in your compost bin, throw them in a bucket and make compost tea out of it. This stuff is awesome. I mean, everybody should be making their own compost tea and using this on your gardens. And I'll do a more detailed video on this stuff. I just wanted to get it out there so people had access to the information and could start brewing this stuff right away. I'll link everything in the description below. So I'll link it in the YouTube description. So you'll have to go to YouTube. And if you're not subscribed to our YouTube channel, that gardening channel, go subscribe to it. And, watch our videos. I've got a lot of good videos on there, and ask questions and comment. That's how the YouTube algorithm works. If you guys comment on these videos, it shows interest, and it shows people that you like these videos, and then my videos show up higher in the algorithm, which is great. More people should be growing like this. So this week we'll have some more videos out. They'll be all about trellising. I've got like 6 videos lined up, and then there'll be another video with Josh on our other YouTube channel, That Root Life. On that channel, it's more health-related content, medical medium content. We've been doing a lot of healing stories with some folks that have healed all sorts of chronic illness, mystery disease, using medical mediums information. Josh is the person that we've been doing a couple videos with. He's got, I think, 2 more videos lined up, and then we'll have our next guest, our next round of videos. But go check those out if you haven't already, and subscribe to both channels. And that's it. Get out in the garden this weekend, have some fun, and make yourself some teas now that you know how to do this. And ask us questions. Feel free to message us on Instagram or YouTube. We're here to help you out. So have a good one. Have a good night. I'll see you guys next week. All right. Bye.